I guess for us, fortunately, we didn't get to watch the whole game because it was
in disguise.
That was a rough night. There hasn't been many rough nights like that in this season, thankfully, but last night was rough. Surprisingly rough to me. I thought they would win. I thought Domas would play well last night because, as I said yesterday at the end of the show, Toronto doesn't really have one of those beefy centers in the middle. And I thought, hey, this is a night where you kind of put Domas's back to the basket in the paint.
You had to say it, didn't you?
Yeah.
You just had to say it.
Oh, yep. Domas is going to have a great night.
I certainly did not speak that into existence. I did the exact opposite. I spoke it out of existence. I pushed it away.
I think breaking the cattle's curse gave, you got a little carried away with things.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
I would agree.
Started popping off.
I would agree.
Right?
Got a little too far ahead of myself.
A little too lippy.
Yeah. A little too much yapping from these gums. What was I thinking? A little too
pump that back a little bit.
Exactly.
A little too cocksure, as they say yesterday during the show. So it was a rough night last night for the Kings. Here was Coach Brown after the loss.
They just flat out kicked our ass. It's simple. Their length, their athleticism, their switchability, their ball pressure, their physicality sped us up, and we didn't do a great job of handling that.
I think the mic's off. Yeah, this is what happens because I'm in a rush during
mic check.
I'm in a rush trying to make the crossover here work, and my phone's making sound, so I just had to put it on mute. The mic was off.
Excuses.
Obviously,
put
Coach
your phone
Brown
on silent before you come in.
I tried to. Today I did not. Sorry, Rami. I apologize.
I'm just asking.
I did not run through the checklist of 50 things before I get in today. So look, Mike Brown obviously not mincing words, telling us how he felt about that game, and they got their butt whooped.
I mean, if you were going to nutshell it, there's really no other way to put it than what Mike Brown just said right there. That was. And I said a couple of nights ago, the Memphis win, even without John, Steven Adams, maybe the most impressed I've been coming away from a Kings game, from a Kings win. Last night, maybe the most unimpressive Kings outing of the entire season. And again, I don't know if I'm just prisoner of the moment and I'm all caught up in the hype and every game is the best or the worst game I've ever seen based on the outcome. But that was from start to finish, at least from what I hear, because I couldn't watch the game. But from start to finish, it was just flat. Like it was the Raptors game from the starting line to the finish line, and that is not a team that should happen against. There are very few teams in the NBA for the status the Kings have reached, in my eyes, how good a team I think they are. Where I see a performance like I saw last night, and I just go, hey, man, you ran into a really good team. You know what I mean? But the Raptors are far from that.
I was going to say, the
Raptors are far from that.
Not a really good team at all. I mean, they were going in last night, 6-7 games, under 500. And what was the most surprising thing about last night's game was obviously the offense. We know the defense has been a train wreck during stretches of this season and overall has not been nearly good enough, somewhere in the mid-20s in defensive rating. So we tend to expect this defense to not be good, Rami, but offensively, they could not do anything last night with the basketball. I mean, Toronto's defense, let's first talk about that because I want to give the Raptors credit. They played a great game defensively. Their hands were busy nonstop in the passing lanes, digging when guys were driving. Their hands were so busy last night, consistently busy. You could tell it was irritating Domas and Foxy all night long. Like it was just pestering them all night with hands. Their length. They don't have a big beefy guy in the middle, as I said, not your prototypical old school kind of Jonas Valanciunas back in the day, but they have tons of length. And those guys are athletic and they're long and they're busy and they're physical and they're just constantly in your face.
Yeah. You know what it reminded me of, Nick? They kind of gave Sabonis the Giannis treatment. And Toronto has been one of the teams, and whether they've been, going back to when they were an Eastern Conference power to what they are now, they're one of those teams that kind of always gave Giannis and the Bucks some problems and matchup problems. And they gave Domas the same type of treatment last night, man. And I don't know if we can we just chalk that up as Domas was due for a stinker? Because, I mean, he's been on
we'll get to Domas.
Such a run.
We'll get to Domas a little bit later in depth. But, yeah, I mean, I would say that everybody is going to have a game that is going to be a little bit of a hiccup. I would not go too far with anything from last night's game because, honestly, Rami, some of this is Toronto and their length and how deep they are with that length. But it's also just some of the simple stuff. Like, pressure and physicality is going to bother teams from time to time. But really that the simple stuff like playing against a zone caused some issues. And I thought that Fox and Domas, they tried to dribble through traffic way too often. They tried to dribble through, double teams. They tried to dribble through that length. They tried to dribble through all of those hands. And I mentioned it yesterday. The one thing I did get right about this game yesterday, Rami, when we talked about it, the idea that Toronto feasts on turnovers. They had 19 turnovers. Kings had 19 turnovers last night. You can't turn over the ball that much against that team.
And 17 points off of turnovers. And another couple of things. And stop me if you've heard this one before, Nick, like in every Kings loss. Because if you look at a couple of statistics, field goal percentage, they shot almost 48%.
Yep.
Toronto was 49.5%. A 3-point, they smoked Toronto in 3-point percentage. They shot 40% from three. Toronto shot just 30%. But then you look at rebounds. They get out rebounded 41-34. Points off, or second chance points, 18-2.
Yep.
18-2 Toronto outscored the Kings in second chance points. You look at bench scoring. Kings got smoked there as well. You got a combined 23 points on 7 of 23 from Lyles, Monk, Mitchell, Metu, and Rashawn Holmes. You're not going to, and we keep on pointing to these things, Nick, things that you can consistently point to in Kings losses. And you can go, like, I can bet you they lost in rebounds. I can bet you they lost in points in the paint, second chance points, and more often bench points.
58-42 points in the paint last night. Again, so you're minus 16 in the paint. You're minus 16 in second chance points. You're minus 7 in rebounds. You turned it over 19 times. Minus, lots of turnovers. I tweeted last night at Nick C Radio, if you've seen this team lose this season, a lot of these losses look the same. It does have the same old feel. I also thought, interestingly enough, that Toronto had more urgency last night. We go back to Monday night's game, and I said the Kings found that urgency in the third quarter, and that took that game in a different direction against Memphis. And you could see it. It was palpable when the Kings found that urgency, and they really forced themselves upon the Grizzlies. Last night, it was the complete opposite. I thought Toronto showed the urgency. I thought Toronto forced the action upon the Kings. And I thought the Kings, they were losing out on 50-50 balls. They were not scrappy as much as they should have been through the whole 48 minutes. And so Toronto's a team. When you're the Kings, you're in the position of the Kings, right? You're sitting there last night, 8 games above 500. You're the 3 seed in the Western Conference, even though, as I heard Deuce earlier today, we've talked about this, the Western Conference is still close. So the 3 seed, it's not like you have a 10-game lead on the 6 seed, but you're the 3 seed. You've been playing good basketball. I think the Kings have won, 8 out of their last 10 or whatever it was. You have to understand in that moment, you're facing a team in Toronto that needs to win. And they're 6 games below 500. And all the rumors are Fred VanVleet and OG Anunoby are on the trade block, and Masai Ujiri is going to do something. That team last night played like a team that was fighting for its life together. And the Kings played like the team, we're 3 seed, we'll be fine.
I was doing the crosstalk with Deuce and Mo brought up sort of that human element, Nick, of the Kings about to start a 7-game road trip, looking at the Raptors and seeing a team that's in 10th place in the Eastern or 12th place in the Eastern Conference, 6 games under 500 coming into the night. Sort of a combination between a trap game in terms of looking at the competition and thinking, we got this. Let's look ahead at what's coming. And also, what can happen to anybody when you're about to go on a long road trip or a long work trip. You know what I mean? Your mind might not be in the present moment as much as you'd like. These are human beings at the end of the day, and they can fall into the same sort of mental traps or tendencies that any one of us can. You know what I mean? I don't know if that's what happened last night, but that might explain that difference in the urgency and intensity of the two teams that you're talking about.
Coaching staff has to be frustrated. I have to imagine that, some of this at this point is personnel. Coaching staff is well aware of what we're talking about, points in the paint, second chance points, turnovers, all those things. They're well aware of that, right? They understand. I'm sure they've told the players a bunch of times, hey, guys, look, this is what's killing us, right? What's killing us is rebounding. What's killing us are the turnovers. When we lose, this is what hurts us as a team. But they've been incapable of correcting some of those things so far. So is it some of the personnel? We'll have to see, and we'll have to see if Monty feels like he's got to address some of these things before the trading deadline.